This podcast is sponsored by Sand Dollar Analytics and is brought to you by Sand Dollar Communications. Hi, I'm Eden Mary Gator, and in the last episode, I talked about how we arrived at a national discussion about the 6 major economies that we need to develop in the Bahamas. Those 6 economies being the digital economy, the knowledge economy, the conceptual economy, and the blue, green, and orange economies. I also mentioned the possibility for the Bahamas to introduce a new global economy that can be known as the world's first aquamarine economy. I now want to invite you to follow a multi-part series where I talk about each of those economies and how they tie into the development of the Bahamas. So for the next 6 or 7 episodes that I'll be doing, one episode will be dedicated to the blue economy, another episode will cover the green economy, and so on until I've covered all the relevant economies for the Bahamas. Right now, due to the direct impact that Dorian has made on our economy, and that followed by the prolonged impact of COVID, right now we're in the greatest need for a national development plan with strategies for revitalizing the Bahamian economy. And this is a time where another 6,000 plus people have graduated to be added into the work environment that is already saturated. And that's not even including college students, the ones local and the ones who might be returning home from abroad. And all of these are graduates who are facing a reality where the traditional work environment cannot employ everybody. Some of these graduates will not even qualify, while others will find themselves having to settle in mismatched jobs. There's also the potential for jobless growth. And what jobless growth means is the economy can experience growth while at the same time there can be less jobs despite that growth. One of the main reasons for that is because technology will be displacing at least 50% of the jobs that currently exist. So that's going to create an environment where not only do we have new graduates competing for jobs, but we'd also have people whose jobs would have been displaced competing as well. And they'd all be competing for less jobs that require old skills. On the flip side, though, although technology will be displacing 50% of existing jobs, it can in turn create 50% of newer jobs as well. So there can be a net gain of available jobs, but if our graduates and our workforce are not prepared for that, then that's when we have a problem. So upskilling is definitely a must. Now, for those who want to start a business, it's important more than ever to understand that there are no more boundaries. And what I mean is, we need to think beyond just local when establishing any new business, because business and money knows no boundaries and has no borders. That's why we need to think beyond just creating businesses that only depend on the local community. We need to think beyond just creating another hair or nail salon, or even another localized practitioner in law or in medicine or in financial services, which all of these are subject to jurisdictional licensing requirements. So when I say localized practitioner, that means restricted to only practice within the Bahamas jurisdiction. And although it's not a bad thing to want to start these types of local businesses and practices, the reality is by creating more and more local dependent businesses, especially to the point where there's more than is needed, we'll only be fighting over the same limited money that already exists within our local economy. And if we continue with that, then sooner rather than later, we'll end up cannibalizing each other because we don't have economies of scale, or we don't have the critical mass to support every business that depends solely on the local market. So really, we're just competing for the same amount of dollars that already exists in our economy. And whether that amount fluctuates to increase or decrease, we have people who are solely dependent on the state of the tourism industry. We have people who are waiting on outside forces and waiting on government to help turn our economy around for the better, just so we can continue to compete passively for the same amount of money that circulates in our economy. But I want you to know that that's not the best approach, especially for this new economic environment that we've been wanting and needing. It doesn't stimulate the growth that we need. And we shouldn't be just trying to survive in business. We should be trying to thrive. And that's why we need to shift our focus to the global environment, because establishing global businesses will allow for us to live local, but build global. So remember that saying, okay? Live local, build global. Because, why limit our business to just millions when we can have access to trillions? Why limit our business to the hundreds of thousands of people who live in the Bahamas when we can have access to billions of people and trillions of revenue globally? The 6 main economy types that I'll be talking about in this series will help us see how we can rethink conventional businesses and conventional means of work in a way that allows for us to tap into the global environment. So, take, for example, a nail technician. A nail technician would normally have to service 1, 2, or 3 people per day. It may be more, it may be less. But still, the nail technician would have to service each of these people one at a time and would probably earn $50 from each customer. You still have to account for the cost of light and overhead and other expenses. But what if instead of servicing individual clients, imagine if that nail technician were to simply demonstrate their own examples of nail designs and creativity and share tutorials across multiple digital platforms. They could move towards building an online following and establish a personal brand. And the nail technician could then be in a position to get sponsorship from the very same brands that they would have had to continuously purchase products from in their more traditional line of work. And this example can be applied to other professions as well. So a mechanic can do this, a carpenter can do this, a hairstylist, and so on. And that's just one way to monetize a skill more efficiently. There are countless other ways, especially depending on what it is you want to do. But the point is, why limit ourselves to a few dollars per hour when we can use our time and skill more efficiently and access a global market where we can scale and eliminate major costs and increase our revenue exponentially? So with the example of the nail technician, we can see how that person would have tapped into the knowledge economy, because rather than having to do the actual job of servicing people's nails, instead, the nail technician can simply showcase and model their expertise for others to see how different nail designs can be done. And that's what the knowledge economy is. The value is in the knowledge that's being shared. And with this example, we see that really no major upskilling is required. But also with our classic nail tech example, where I mentioned building an online following, we see that the digital economy is tapped into as well. Because in order to establish and grow and monetize an online presence, that requires the use of digital tools and digital platforms and access to digital consumer audiences. There's also another economy at play with the example that I used, and that is the orange economy. So with the nail tech example, the orange economy is also known as the creative economy. And that has to do with the arts and entertainment and media. It also covers design and fashion and creative content. And it even covers marketing and publishing as well. So with just that one example that I used, we see how 3 major economies were involved: the digital, the orange, and the knowledge economies. And we're able to see how traditional careers can be transformed and how they can tap into not just one, but a number of different economies. So yeah, my goal with this series is to offer solutions that can be implemented almost right away, especially when considering that in each of the 6 major economies, there are at least 12 sub-economies. So even if we were to focus only on creating, let's say, even if we were to only focus on creating 500 employment opportunities in each of those 12 sub-economies, right there, that could create 36,000 new employment opportunities. And that's not even accounting for the multiplier effect. Also, 500 employment opportunities in each of the sub-economies is quite reasonable because when we think about it, many of these sub-economies don't require any major upskilling. So it's quite easy for 500 Bahamians to easily transition into each of these. So I'm super excited to do this series. I hope to see us move towards our greatest potential. One of the reasons why I believe we haven't adjusted for the new digital global environment as quickly as we should is because a lot of the promising digital solutions can seem so futuristic that it's easy to think that it cannot be implemented right away. Or that the technology can seem so unfamiliar that it's intimidating. So with this series, I want to outline solutions that we can easily transition into, and then progressively, I'll continue on with how we can implement more innovative solutions. Just so you know, my goal is to experience today what most people think is only tomorrow. I want to experience the future of the new, better Bahamas. I want my children to experience it, and I believe that that's possible today. So I invite you as I talk about the Bahamas through the eyes of a Generation Z person. So starting with this multi-part series where I talk about the 6 major economies for the Bahamas, I invite you to follow. And after this series, I want to do a bonus episode where I'll talk about my concept for developing an aquamarine economy that can be unique to the Bahamas. So you can go to EdenMaryGator.com for all of my social media to stay updated. You can also like and share this episode so more people can follow as well. I appreciate the encouragement and support that I've gotten from the start of this podcast series. And you all continue to support me, so thank you so much. You inspire me. Until next time, I'm Eden Mary, and thanks for listening.